What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of New Orleans Basketball, New Orleans Network podcast. As always, I'm your host, Raphael Rattler, joined by my fellow middle brother, Garrett G-Money. What's popping with you, bro? We are finally here.
Yeah, man, what's up, bro? Feels like I should put out my little first day of school outfit on the bed. With how excited I am that the NBA is back, man. It feels like it's been simultaneously forever, and I just feel like it was yesterday that we was watching Tyrese Halliburton almost put BTA to OKC in Game 7, but the Thunder won the championship, and I think it's got something to do with. Shout out to Netflix for dropping the starting five. Please check it out. Yeah, it's been dope. I think I've just gotten into it to really watching it. And it's kind of gotten me in that NBA spirit as the thing coming on, as the season comes on. And it feels good to be back, man. And the city, the city is now really looking for something to grasp on because things are not going as well over on the other side of Airline Drive. So look, the Pelicans have been a unique team. We've called them a unique team for a while. Here's another unique situation where, for like my entire like adulthood and really in like my childhood and all that, like the Saints were like, hey, it is all Saints all the time. Doesn't matter rain or shine. The Saints were the New Orleans was for the Saints. But man, it has gotten to a point where it is a void, a vacuum in the city right now as far as like sports and enjoyment and things. So it's really looking, the Pelicans really have an opportunity here to kind of grasp this city by the Mardi Gras beads, I guess. And really do something nice for the city and put together some good product on the floor. And I think this is a good season to kind of have that there, man. So everything's all good on this side. Everything on yours, man.
Everything is blessed. Yeah, football hasn't been too kind with me. Razorbacks aren't too good. LSU law. Tulane
Neither,
did get a win.
neither are my
Tulane did get a
Cajuns.
win.
Shout out to the Green Wave. Shout out
Yeah,
to the Green Wave.
football season's not going so great. So I, for one, am happy that the regular season is here. Yes, I think New Orleans is looking for a winner, and I think the Pelicans are closer to that than the Saints. I just call that. So before we get too into that, what we saw in the preseason, what we're looking forward to, what questions we still have before Wednesday's opener versus the Memphis Grizzlies. Make sure you guys follow us on Twitter, on X, on IG, on TikTok. That's NO Basketball, no E. Make sure you're liking that episode below. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. So, first off, Garrett, before we dive into the end of preseason, some of the things you saw you liked, some of the things you're like, still got some question about. Shout out to NOB, man. We were ranked in the feed spot top 100 Louisiana podcast. Want to appreciate everybody that's been rocking with us for however many years. Again, it's been some rough roads that we've all gone through together. So shout out to y'all for showing love on that end. That being said, we got to talk about some things. So I don't think it was necessarily a shock that earlier this week the Pelicans announced that they had picked up the options for Yves Missi and for Jordan Hawkins. Now, Yves obviously has not been in the league for as many years as Hawkins, but he was a deeper draft pick coming in at that 21st pick, and Jordan Hawkins was a lotto pick. Just off top, did it surprise you at all that Jordan Hawkins was picked up? Yves not so much, but Jordan Hawkins was picked up? Or is it one of those things where it's a cheap contract from where he was and it's a movable contract that it just makes more sense from a business standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say I was very surprised. I would say I was like mildly
Okay.
surprised. And I say that only because, listen, Jordan Hawkins came into the league as supposed to be like a dead eye knockdown shooter. Came in the league with a different skill set that the Pelicans just did not have and hadn't had in a while. We were excited about what he could possibly bring. And there's just been time after time after time where things out of his control. Obviously, the injury to his back and things that he's dealing with. And then things in his control, right? Like knocking down shots. I thought maybe it would be a situation where the Pelicans would let it play out. But I think to your point, it is a cheap contract. He still has a lot of upside, and his skill set is one that is going to be relevant in the NBA forever, right? Shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And again, for me, it's one of those things where you go through a lot of things with a player. And then on the final year or whatever the case is, do you just move on, or do you just let it see if there's an option for a little bit of prove it deal going on? And so if he comes into the season and plays like everyone expected him to play, and if he can finally get that back issue together and stay on the floor, that he has a value in his shooting and his athleticism. And so I was mildly surprised, but I understand why you do it. Especially if he could get it together. I think, his skill set is still right now very needed on his team, even with the additions of some of the guys that we've talked about before. So I was mildly surprised, but, I understand why you do it.
Yeah, I definitely understand as well. And again, like, I think the conundrum with Jordan Hawkins is, to your point, like, he was brought in to be a floor spacer, someone who's a reliable shooter and things like that. And you've seen different players come through since then. Antonio Reeves come and go, right? And now you're starting to see the Sadiq Beys of the world try to take his space, Mike Peavy, things like that. And so, to your point, I still think that there's a level to him that some of those guys can't get to offensively. But how long are the Pelicans going to wait on that end to see if he gets there or not? And again, he may be one of those people who gets there on his second or third team, right, or fourth team, or he may be one of those players that don't. And so I think it's interesting. Again, like, the crazy part about all of this and the past couple of years with Zion and things like that is that you've drafted like good pieces along the way, but even those pieces haven't been healthy, so you haven't been able to see those pieces grow as well. And I feel like Jordan Hawkins just jumps into that bucket with. So talking about not being healthy, since the last time we talked, Kevon Looney is out with a knee injury that's going to keep him out for 2 to 3 weeks with a strained ligament in his knee. That doesn't sound good. Again, Kevon Looney's only 29, but man, Garrick, every time I see him on the court, I don't look at a 29-year-old player. I just don't feel like he's that. I feel like he's your savvy vet. And so, like, does that injury worry you, combined with the fact that Carlo Makovich, had to exit the game early and then didn't play in the last preseason game and hasn't practiced so far, and the team hasn't updated officially yet? Are the front court injuries starting to concern you? Because Derek Queen was announced to be fully cleared and able to be practiced, and he's back in the mix. He's trying to catch his win and acclimate to the new NBA that's in front of him. But that's still like 2.5, I guess, Hunter Dickinson on the 2-way contract. Big men left on the roster to start the season, right? What are your thoughts on that? Like, is your concern level relatively high or not?
Yeah, certainly not ideal. And listen, I asked this when the Pelicans acquired Kevon Looney. If you remember on the podcast, the first question that you asked me was, I want to see what falls first: the unstoppable object, the unstoppable force, or the immovable object. With the unstoppable force being Kevon Looney's games played streak, and the immovable object of New Orleans health curse, and New Orleans health curse undefeated. Undefeated. That's not it's not great. I think you're going, especially like you play Wemby on the home opener, which is certainly not ideal to have everybody out when that guy comes to town. Listen, the front court is going to be an issue. It just is. Like, you have Yves Missi, and obviously he started off, and played most games last season, more games than any other Pelicans player. But he's still relatively young, still learning his chops. And then, if you going after that, like, the only person like you talking about is Hunter Dickinson. If Kevon Looney's not going to play and Derek Queen is not going to play, so you're going to be going into the season already. We saw the Pelicans deal with rebounding issues in the preseason with Carlo playing, with Yves playing, right, and Kevon Looney playing, whatever. And so in the first 2 games, and so I think you just you have to game plan around it. You know, everybody else has to pick up the slack. It's crazy that we're talking about this when I just watched the starting five, and you know, not to spoil anything, but they were talking about Shea and the Thunder when they played the Clippers, and they didn't have any big men available, right? And they started Lou Dort at the 5, and Jalen Williams was guarding Zubac. Like, you know, Shea said, it is no excuses, right? The NBA doesn't care. And so you need to just go in and game plan around. I think Eves is going to be super important for him to stay out of foul trouble. That's going to be something to watch for the, you know, until, you know, some of these other guys get back available. But yeah, it's not ideal. And you know, going into Hunter Dickinson, like there were some things that looked like decent, right? And he's been in the college game for long. But I don't really know if you want to be playing Hunter Dickinson extended minutes, you know, in a season where your draft pick is out the door. So, listen, it's going to be it was already going to be a gang rebound type of thing for the Pelicans to have to, you know, to play that way. I think now it's just ratcheted up with Kevon Looney out and Derek Queen, you know, not available until when he's available. And so, you know, it's just going to be them game planning around it. But it sucks because you already into the season and you're already talking about two key players at a position that is not really that deep. You know, especially with Carlo out, like it's just not. You're just not going to be able to function the way that you plan to function going into training camp.
Right. All season long, again, some of the moves that were made, obviously highly questioned around the league and around the NBA and things like that. The one move that wasn't made, and you know, we talked about, okay, can you get another replacement for CJ? We talked about drafting another big. We talked about drafting scores off the bench. There was one I tweeted maybe 5 or 6 times. The Pelicans are one front court player away, because if one person goes down, and lo and behold, before we even get to regular season, you lose multiple big guys. So I look at it, and I'm glad you brought up the Oklahoma City Thunder scenario. So last season, obviously they had a historic season. They go on to win the championship, first time in franchise history. They also went large stretches without their two big men, Chet Holmgren, as well as Isaiah Hartenstein. And during that stretch, to your point, and some of the stuff they were talking about starting five, it made them have to rebound all their athletic wings that it forced them to, because literally there was no one to turn to go get rebounds. And so I look at that in that situation for the Pelicans. And to your point, and what we've been talking about before, like you feel the lack of rebounding, both in the games you've seen so far in the preseason, both in last season, and even before then, right? Even seasons prior to, you felt as if rebounding has been an issue for this team. And to be honest, Garrett, I think it's going to be something where that's the most attention that they need to pay, right? In terms of, this is a non-negotiable. If someone misses a rebound early in game, I'd like to see Willie Green use a timeout then and say, this is not something we're going to stand for with 2 minutes to go in the first quarter. One of these games that come up in the upcoming week, because you and I talk about it, no one's going to feel sorry for the Pelicans because you're down 2 front court guys. Go through the NBA right now. LeBron's got back issues. So Bonus is hurt. Like literally every team is down a guy or 2 or 3 before the season even starts. And so for a team and for a league that I think is going to more depth and playing deeper rotations and things like that, you're being tested out of the gate. So how are you going to correct that problem before it gets out the gates and it's an issue too fast? Now, I do think that it's something that they can work around. Again, from all accounts, from what you've seen so far with Derek Queen, he seems to be in much better condition than what he was prior to the injury that he suffered in Summer League with the wrist. Joe Dumars said it himself. He said it himself. Willie Green said it himself. You got hurt on your wrist. That didn't stop your legs from moving. That didn't stop you from being in condition. So as far as getting into basketball shape, the only way you do that playing basketball, but it's not like he hasn't been running. He hasn't been doing 5-on-0 and things like that. And so with the season starting on Wednesday and you already being down Kevon Looney and potentially Carlo Magovich, I'm looking at Derek Queen like, hey, there's some spot minutes you can give us in some type of rotation. Do you think it's one of those things where they kind of play it safe and make sure that he feels 100%? Or do you one of those things where, you know, You feel good. The team feel good. Let's see how it responds and put you out there.
It's going to be very interesting because, listen, there's a new sheriff in town, Joe Dumars, Bad Boys Pistons. As everyone knows, everyone who's watched the Pelicans, follow the Pelicans, if these words mean something to you, return to play conditioning. they mean something to you because you know just how David Griffin ran his ship. His ship was, ready. You got to take steps to get ready. Sometimes to the detriment of like some of the players on the team. Like, man, I could go run, I could go play. And so, it's going to be very interesting to see this test now, to where how this new front office and how the new medical staff, how they all, combine and work together with Derek Queen. Because again, this is a young guy who's just starting at the beginning of his NBA career. And so you definitely don't want to throw him out there to where it could, hinder him moving forward. If it's not completely healed or if he's not ready to go. But at the same time, like, he's a young guy, right? And he's some, if he's already cleared for basketball activities, he's talked about how he's already ready to go. It's all about the coaches and the staff, the medical staff and the training staff. So he's already speaking about like he's ready to play. He wants to get out there. And so, I think this is a situation where they find out, when he's ready to play. This is kind of around the time that they told us that, it was going to be the next available update and things like that. And so if the next update was that he's cleared for basketball contact, I think this is a good opportunity for him to come back and minimize the game's loss, especially now. When you have, this glaring hole on the roster of available big bodies. So I think, he's relatively near. And I think that you could see him. I don't know. I wouldn't bet the opener, but maybe, the season opener. But, maybe you start hearing things about that home opener where, he could potentially be ready to play.
Yeah, I look at Derek Queen in two ways, and you and I have talked about this, especially when we did our draft episode in terms of his skill set and what he could potentially bring. And this kind of leads us into our next topic in terms of like takeaways from the preseason. I think that his skill set is so important to the second unit because the same way we talk about how Jordan Hawkins can be an offense into himself, where I see the Pelicans potentially having issues is when Zion is sitting down, right? Or Trey is sitting down. And Jeremiah Fears, again, is 19 years old and trying to figure his way out. I don't expect him to always get the offense into the best sets possible, things like that. But here's where, like, you saw stretches of it, even in the small glimpses in the preseason, where if a player like Derek Queen, who's a hub type player who you can pass the ball to in the high post and the low post and the paint, wherever, and he's looking to make the next pass, and that's something that the Pelicans haven't had out of the big position in quite some time. I see the ways where you could run offense through him. That's the downside of him being injured all through training camp. They didn't get to build that chemistry with one another as a second unit, as a bench unit, and things like that. But I also think that he's one of those players that has an elevated IQ level when it comes to just the basketball court in general and how players are supposed to move and anticipating plays. And so players like that tend to get started a little bit quicker. I think just like you saw in the summer league and things like that, the more he's on the court, the more he's going to be able to realize these are things I can get away with and these are things that I can't. But in terms of just being able to continuously have the offense flowing, I think that he could play a huge part, especially early on with so many bodies down.
Yeah. The second unit is an interesting unit because, you have Jeremiah Fears, who kind of we've seen him be the point guard of the second unit. Obviously, he and Jose have shared it, but Jeremiah Fears has gotten a pretty decent amount of run with the second unit. So when you look at it, outside of Jeremiah Fears, he's a guy who can get his own bucket, right? But like Sadiq Bey, Jordan Hawkins, like those guys, even Carlo, if he's back, like those guys, outside of having one of Jordan Poole or Trey with them, those guys all rely on, guys setting them up, or, they don't rely on them, but their best bet is to have someone set them up and do things.
Play finishers. Yeah.
Right. And I think even Jeremiah Fears, even though he can get a shot on his own, his game is amplified by having a guy like Derek Queen on the floor, because we saw him in the summer league find, ease Misi on a couple of lobs and things. But I think him with Derek Queen, a lot of pick and pop and, a lot of technical footwork, speed, getting around corners. That's a lot of what he can get with Derek Queen. And Derek Queen can also help Jeremiah Fears get cuts. We see him finishing like to go to the basket and play through contact. And then also find those shooters, right? Be a secondary playmaker outside of Jeremiah Fears on the second unit. Finding Sadiq Bey, finding Carlo McAfee, finding guys like that. And getting guys shots, and even guys like Trey Murphy can play well with him. And so I think, listen, he has a lot of skills that he can put on the floor for the Pelicans. I think even with a healthy roster, I think in a healthy big man room, like he's the most talented big man on the roster. And so I think, this is an opportunity for him when he does get back to kind of establish that, right? We talked about, just opportunities and being able to kind of seize that opportunity. Jeremiah Fears got some run in Australia, kind of seized that opportunity a little bit and rolled it into the NBA preseason against the NBA competition. Now with Derek Queen back, and obviously he was going to be a big part anyway. When you bring him back, now he's the only other big man outside of Yves Misi that you have available. So not only will he get an opportunity to play, but he'll be featured in that second unit in opportunity, and that'll give him opportunities to grow as well. So I think his skill set fits right in with the Pelicans play style, but like him being a big man fits right into what the Pelicans need right now.
Right. So you go from one rookie to another, and I'm not talking about Jeremiah Fears. Look, Garrett. Michael Peavy got the first man off the bench assignment in the last preseason game versus Orlando. Sadiq Bey took the night off from that end. He took his lumps versus Paulo Banchero and versus Franz Wagner, but Garrett, I just think he's gonna play. Like the way that he holds himself on the court defensively, especially as a bigger body, as a younger player. He just seems a little bit advanced from a defensive standpoint, just because most rookies come in the league and they have no clue, right? Like they know how to score when the ball's in their hands, but they have to learn how to play off ball. They definitely have to learn how to play defense and things like that. I think with Micah Peavy, he's figuring out, how do I control my aggressiveness? Like he came in and got a couple quick fouls, trying to get too quick, and Franz used his momentum against him, a couple things like that. But you can see like the wheels turning, and you can see how they're going to be there. The confidence is there. Now he didn't shoot the ball the greatest in the preseason, but there wasn't like that hesitation that you've seen from Dyson Daniels over the years, that you've seen from Jose Alvarado over the years, that you've seen from Herb Jones over the years, where players had to kind of like grow into their confidence, letting the ball go as a role player and things like that. I just don't think that he necessarily falls into that category, because he was a player who played with the ball in his hands in college, right? And things like that. And so what are your thoughts on Micah Peavy there? Like, do you think he's someone that, is breaking case of emergency if Herb's down, if Sadiq's down, and then you go to Micah Peavy? Or do you think it's someone where maybe at the beginning of the season you're running 10, 11, 12 guys out there and Micah Peavy's one of them?
Yeah, well, he's definitely the most Willie Green guy out of the rookies. I mean, he is made in the mold of Willie Green players, right? Defense first, hard nose, high effort, high motor, high IQ. Like that is all the things that Willie Green loves. And so, I think he's going to be a part of the rotation. I think, it's going to be interesting to see how much. I don't know if he's going to be, hey, go out there, you got 20, 25 minutes or something, anything like that. But I do think he's going to allow, Micah Peavy, Willie Green's going to allow Micah Peavy to play, because he does all of the non-negotiables for Willie Green. And listen, your first couple of defensive assignments, you got Paolo and Franz, who are all, all-star, all NBA type players. You're gonna take your lumps, right? Herb Jones took some. Remember those Luka Doncic days that Herb was getting a lesson out there, and so it happens, right? It happens to the best. But that's the good thing about the preseason. That's the good thing about young players. They get to learn, they get to experience those things and build on the next game and the next game and the next game. So I think his shooting is going to be the switch factor. I think if he's the guy, if he gets his minutes out there and he gets a couple of those open shots, because they're going to leave him open. If he's the guy that's on the floor, he's the guy that they're going to leave open. Right. If he's able to knock down a good percentage of those threes, I think that's when you give him more leeway. I think that's the only thing that's going to keep him, because he passes, he rebounds, he plays hard defense, he picks up full court. Everything else is there, right? You just can't be. We've learned, from watching the Thunder and the Pacers in the finals. You can't be a liability out there on neither side of the ball. Like, you have to. And so you have to be able to knock those open shots down, because it's going to prevent the floor from being shrunk. And so it's going to be interesting to see, how when Willie Green puts him on the floor, because again, it's going to be a big test for Willie with all three of these rookies. But I think Micah Peavy is the most Willie Green guy, and if you gave him some truth serum and was like, which one of these three would you rather play first, he would probably say Micah Peavy. And so I think, it's going to be very interesting when he plays and what kind of leash does he have. But I think that shooting is going to be the factor, because he was a pretty good shooter his last year at Georgetown. And so he, like you say, he shoots with confidence. It's not a confidence issue. It's just about knocking the shot down at this point. And if he's able to knock those shots down, I think he gets more leeway and more time to play on the floor.
I think the same that could be said for his fellow rookie classmate in Jeremiah Fears. Look, as the preseason went on, he got better and better. He got more comfortable, less and less turnovers. He learned how to kind of vary up his speed. And he seems like one of those players that clicks on the things fast. He reclassified and went into the draft a year early and things like that. But there was a lot to like, and you and I, again, prior to the draft, we were against the Jeremiah Fears just because he's a small guard. And again, the history tells us that the NBA is not kind to small guards, but the Pelicans doubled up. So I guess that wasn't an issue there. But the more and more you see of him, the more and more you're like, that guy needs minutes early and soon, right? Because you want to see him fail, and you want to see what he looks like in February and what it looks like in March, and what's the next step from them. What were your takeaways from him in the preseason? What do you think he can kind of come out, at least in the opening parts of the season, and contribute as far as winning goes?
Yeah, we definitely were against the Jeremiah Fears draft, because you talked about the small guard. We just talked about Kobe Buffkin off the pod. Kobe Buffkin just got cut from the Nets. You get cut from the Nets. So yeah, and again, that was the issue coming in, was the defensive side, the smallish build. But if you're gonna be a small guard, if you look at the successful small guards in the league, right, the Damian Lillards, John Morant's, guys like that, like if you look at those Trae Young, you look at those small guards, they have an elite skill set. Something about them is elite, right? Damian Lillard shot making, Trae Young shot making and passing. John Morant's athleticism and IQ is off the chart. So like you have, they all have a skill set. Jeremiah Fears is the latest one to have an elite skill set already. And so if you're gonna be a successful young guard, you have to be able to capitalize on that elite skill set. And for Jeremiah Fears, it's his handle, it's his speed, and you can watch it growing into learning how to master that particular craft at the NBA level, right? He's got a long way to go from there, but you can see the incremental steps, right? I talked about it when he got drafted. I don't want him to slow down. You don't want him to slow down, because that's what makes him great. You want him to learn how to play at that speed, with care and with that point guard vision that you have to have. And I told you I said on the pod after the summer league, after I saw him at summer league in person, there were just a lot of things, and I was like, oh, okay, I didn't know he could do that. I didn't know that he could turn into the corner and make a cross court pass, right, and make a wraparound pass to the center for a standing dunk. I didn't know he could do that, and he would jump in the air, and he would stay in the air for a while, and as people were coming down, he's making a pass at the last moment. A lot of players, that's a bad move. And probably for him, it's a bad move. You don't want to keep doing it over and over again.
He got caught with it once in Orlando. Yeah,
exactly. But there are times where, like, okay, like he's able to fit that pass there. And there was a pass that he made to Micah Peavy in the last game that I tweeted immediately. I said that right there, that was the thing that I was like, okay, if he's going to be able to get into the paint, be, and understand, his angles and his speed and the things that are working for him, and then process and make that pass to a guy like those are the plays that I'm like, okay, that is going to make him a successful play. The pass to Ease Measy down the middle on the fast break that led to the Ease Measy dunk, like that's playmaking. That's a feel for the game, and that's something that he is elite at. Now he's going to get attacked on the defensive end, but you saw him with his fast hands getting into the passing lanes, getting steals, those type of things. But if he's able to master that speed and do some of those snake dribbly things that we saw and find guys open and things, he has the it factor. Whatever that it thing is that makes Damian Lillard great, that makes Trae Young great, that makes Ja Morant great, he has that it factor. He has that elite skill, that and that mentality that he's the best player on the floor. And you saw it in that Houston Rockets game. And so I there's a lot to like about Jeremiah Fears. It's going to be, again, very interesting to see when Willie Green looks down his roster past his starting five and realize, like, there is no more, like, vet that you can grab. Like, yeah, you can grab Sadiq Bey, you could go Jose, but, like, Jeremiah Fears is going to be right there. And, he has done nothing to have his any playing time that he might have already had going in. He has done nothing to get it taken away. And if anything, I think he's given himself even a little bit more leeway to get even more minutes. And I think he's one of those guys. We talk about this with rookies all the time, but I think he is like the prime like candidate for this. If you just give him time and give him reps, I think this is the type of player that can get better literally by playing basketball and learning the speed and learn the game. He can learn quicker than a lot of other rookies because he has such confidence and such an elite skill set. And so, if he can continue to rein in those turnovers, I think there's a lot to like about Jeremiah Fears. And I think that Willie Green is going to see that you're going to need his skill set on the floor more often than not. You have it in a version of it in Jose. When he comes in and he kind of just lifts the energy, lifts the speed, lifts the passion for the game. Jeremiah Fears has that, but he does it with a little like Tony Chacherins. And so I think you gotta give him some leeway to play, and I think he will. I think Jeremiah Fears is going to see. We're going to be surprised how often we see Jeremiah Fears in the beginnings of the season.
Look, he came out and said he wanted to be Rookie of the Year. So far, you've seen him come off the bench before Jose every single time. You've heard Jose come out and say, basically, they drafted my replacement, like the things he can do with the ball at 18 years old, like kind of talking it almost like, damn, like this guy, he deserved it, right? Things like that. You see some of that. And again, like he's going to take his rookie lumps. You saw him go 2 for 1,000, like in different games, like that stuff's going to happen. But I agree with you. The more that he's around the game and learns how to master the things he does well, the better he will be. Someone else that falls into that category, and this is one of my major takeaways from the season. Obviously, the Pelicans bet everything on Zion going into the season, next year's draft pick. It's not about Derek Queen. It's all the bet is on Zion, not Derek Queen. It's on Zion. Garrett, I know it's preseason, and I understand. You know the series that made me think this is a little bit different? Okay, so I tweeted it up twice, but just because it's always interesting to me. Paulo Banchero and Franz Wagner went and said, we're going to run a pick and roll versus Trey Murphy and Zion Williamson, thinking we're going to take advantage of one of their defensive guys. And when they switched and Zion sat in the seat on Paulo and then sat in the seat on Franz, and I'm like, that's a different level of Zion that you've never seen at -1 games to the season before. That someone who's willing to lock in on the last game of a preseason right before you're about to get subbed in versus someone else's best player when you're trying to make a comeback. There was a time when the Pelicans were down big in that last preseason game. And again, it's a preseason game. But I look at the box score and I'm like, Zion has 16 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, and 1 steal in 12 minutes and 0 free throws. And he's 80% from the field. And when you look at the shot attempts, there weren't very many dunks. Half of them were jump shots. And I'm like, Garrett, the more he's on the court, he seems like a player who was healthy all summer and literally just looked at different parts of his game and said, what are the things I can get to and I feel comfortable about it? I'd love to see him start the season that way because you've seen it before. Players try stuff out in the preseason, shoot threes in the preseason, they get the regular season, they kind of calm it down. I would love to see Zion start out the way that he ended preseason, being comfortable getting the counters and going to it before you have to, before you go to the ground 8 times and don't get the foul call. Go into it because you're comfortable going to. What have your thoughts been of Zion so far, and what do you kind of anticipate as the season starts in a couple of days?
Yeah, he looks like a guy that's trusting his work, and so that's going to be the main story going into this, because again, Zion is going to be Zion. You've seen him when he's on the floor, like he's a top insert single digit, small double digit number, whatever you want to put player in the league. What you've been waiting for is the development of the offensive repertoire, right? And again, we've seen it at times, right? The man's first game on the court, he made 4 threes, and everybody was like, well, that's the end of that. Good luck, NBA, right? And then he just stopped shooting them, right? And then all of a sudden, you started seeing him shoot a little bit more middies, and you're like, okay, here we go. And then he stopped shooting them. And then, like, the consistent development, right? Like, that's what makes the best players in the league, the best players in the league, right? They every year they come back with something different. They can do something different. They add a different, like you say, a counter to your defensive moves that you've come up to counter their offensive moves. And so, that last game against the Magic where you saw him shoot, some middies, it wasn't those like, okay, end of the shot clock, I got to put this up, it's going to be awkward. It was, I'm getting to a spot, I see 2 people there, let me hit, let me retreat dribble, and I'm going to shoot a jumper that I've shot up 500 times that Tuesday morning, before lunchtime or in the gym this past summer. I'm just going to shoot it because I know what I've been working on. And he went to it again, and then he went to it again. And it was like, okay, here you go. Like, here is that offensive development. And so if that is something that he can bring into the season, again, you saw the stat sheet stuffer. The thing I was impressed with that I kept tweeting about is the defensive playmaking, right? Like, it's one thing to be a good defender. Like you talk about, sit in the stands and stand people up, right? Because you're so much bigger, so much athletic, so much more athletic than they are. It's different when you are getting into the passing lanes, when you are doing, Jose got his GTA still where he, comes up behind the players, bringing the ball up at half court. My favorite one was Zion when the other defender
not looking,
present, pushing up on the ball handler, and he turns the ball handler, and before you know it, Zion is on the other side taking it for the fast break, 360. We saw 2 of them in back-to-back games, and so that side of the ball, that is what I think can elevate Zion to another level. Because again, to get into like those MVP conversations, not saying Zion is there, but if you want to get into that, it's got you have to put up some absurd numbers against the likes of Jokic and Giannis and SGA, like and Wemby, like you're gonna have to put up some insane numbers. Zion can get 6-8 points extra just playing in the passing lane. He got 4 steals, in the Rockets game. Like, you could, if you getting into into the passing lanes like that, getting leak outs, that's 6-8 points for your team as well as your scoring average, right? That gets you from 24 to 26, 27 a game, where you're up there with those guys. And it helps the Pelicans as well generate offense in places that they can steal offense where they're really good at. And so I think that, Zion has he is one of those internally motivated people that Jordan Poole just talked about. There's a lot of players on this team that does. Zion, I think, needs to have the most motivation, because I keep talking about it. These USA basketball, you don't even hear about Zion. You don't hear about Zion and who's the best this and who's got the highest ceiling, who would you want to have to start your team in. Like, Zion was supposed to be the American player to take that role, him and Ja. And now, like, Zion is his, we've, by all accounts, maybe got that switch is flipped. And so now he understands he's coming into the season in the best shape he's ever been. He's looked more locked in than he's ever been. He's saying all the right things. He's doing all the right things, and it's translating to the few preseason games that we've seen so far. Now it's an opportunity for him to use that to spring forward, because, again, not a lot of people are going to have eyes on the Pelicans. And so you come out roaring, putting up, the numbers that you can put up and help the Pelicans to a 4-1 start or a 5-0 start, something like that, then that starts putting you in conversations and getting to you where you need to be as far as your talent goes. So I think Zion has a big year. If God willing, knock on wood, he can defeat the curse for one season. But I think if he can, like, this is the best we've seen Zion look, and the season hasn't even started yet. And so if it's not gonna be this year, then when is it? And I think this is as good a year as ever to put the bet on Zion.
Yeah, I think you're right from that accord. And I think the only thing we didn't touch on, as far as, like, obviously everyone knows what this season means for this entire organization and everybody involved. The same way you talk about Jose lighting up a gym and Jeremiah Fears looking like he has that capability. If there's anybody in the league, and the reason why the ESPN will not leave Zion alone, that can light up a gym, it's the guy that does random 360 dunks as if he has a 99 dunk on 2K. Listen, when he's aggressive, like you saw it in the Rockets game, you saw it in the Magic game. The Pels are kind of middling along, or they're down by 15, and all of a sudden Zion's like, nope. And he turns it up, to your point, most of the time on the defensive end. And then all of a sudden, the whole team is rolling. Everybody's attacking. Everybody's pushing up on DB. Everybody's going to. That's why I think he's the one that has to start games the strongest. Because if everyone's feeding off his volume, you get off to better starts. And the Pelicans have been in terrible fits of getting off the bad starts for years and years and years. This third quarter, and again, it was a preseason game versus Orlando, not reading too much into it. But, like, so many times you've seen the Pelicans just get dominated. You saw it in the Rockets game, just get dominated in the third quarter. And the fact that, like, Zion led the charge, and then Jordan Poole started hitting shots, then Trey started hitting shots, I think you need to turn that switch on before, he runs through the tunnel, Duke from number one. Like, I think that's what needs to happen. Like, that's my biggest takeaway of the preseason, that he needs to act as if his brand is on the line, which it is for this season, and take account and take it personally to tip off every single game. And from all accounts, from what you've seen so far, it seemed to be just that. Now, I do have one question before we get to the regular season, that, again, there's going to be a lot of questions that come up along the way, and you still don't know what surprises are in store. We still got 48 hours before Wednesday? Last year, never mind. I'm not even going to talk about that.
Let's not.
I want to know who the odd man out is, Gary. Because even without, Kevon Looney not going to play, I doubt if Carlo plays Wednesday. Maybe, but I doubt if Carlo plays Wednesday. Even still, somebody between, like, Jose, Micah Peavy, Jordan Hawkins is not going to be playing severe minutes to start the season when you're playing divisional opponents twice in the first week. I just want to see what that looks like, because you and I, we've talked about already on this pod, Jeremiah Fears looks like the guy you got to give a leash to and let him fail, and let's see if you could not lose the game while he's out there, if he is going through lumps and things like that. And so, like, I think he has to be in the rotation. I just don't think that that's a player you can start the season and say, we're not giving him 15 minutes tonight or 20 minutes. I just don't think you could do that. So then after that, man, you're talking Jordan Hawkins, but you kind of need his shooting, because, again, you saw what it looks like when Zion sits or when Trey sits, and there aren't a whole lot of people who can create for themselves or get their own bucket, things like that. So that's question. So, like, I just want to know what the rotation looks like. And is it 10, 11, 12 to start the season? Is it 8, 9 to start the season? What does it look like? Because, again, we've talked about how important it is for the Pelicans to win some of these games coming out the gates. What's your biggest question leading into the regular season on Wednesday when everything's going?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a huge question, especially, we haven't even talked about at some point DeJounte is going to come back. So it's just a lot of talented players. Who's going
not playing? Yeah.
Somebody's not going to play. I think my biggest question this year is going to be, can Trey level up? And I mean permanently level up. What I mean by that is, we saw at last year, at times as the number one option, Trey looked phenomenal. The growth was real. The leap that he took last year was real. And then you saw, as he put a bunch of games together as the number one option, and defenses got even more keened on him, it got a little more tougher for him. Still had a great season until he, obviously got hurt. But it was the trajectory that he was on when he was playing as the number one option was something to, you was like, oh, is this guy going to be an all-star type of player? That type of thing. And now that you've gotten your paycheck, I think Zion, like you said, Zion is the ceiling and the floor raiser. I think, if he's playing at his highest peak, the team can go to where they need to go. Maybe not all the way there, but he could drag you to right in a direction. I think Trey pushes the Pelicans past where they need to go, because if he is a number two knocking on the door of number one option, bro, and he's a constant 23 a game, because Zion is who he is. But again, is one of the things I want him to have that goal on, which I talked about last podcast, which was taking the most shots on the team. He's not a selfish player. That's just not what he does. He's going to be looking to pass. And I think Trey needs to be a little bit more selfish offensively and say, okay, when Zion is looking for that outlet, like, let me make sure I'm the guy that's available and there for him. We saw, last season with the Thunder, just hate to keep bringing it back, but they're the champions. Shea got them where they needed to go, and they were phenomenal. They got to the second round of the Western Conference, but they ran up against Luka and Kyrie, right? Like they ran up against those two guys. This season, Jalen Williams was ready, and you saw he had a 40-point game in the finals. You saw what happened.
The messed up wrist, yeah,
with a bad wrist. You saw what happens when the second best player ascended to another level, right? Ascended to that all-NBA level. Same thing with the Celtics, right? The Jaylen Brown, Tatum, how many memorable games we saw with Tatum? It wasn't until Jaylen Brown was ready where they started looking like the next ones up, and they won their championship. Trey needs to get there with Zion. He needs to take that next step and be consistently, every time he touches the floor, he should be, 23, 24, knocking on 50, 40, 90 this season. Like, that should be something he should, look for and can be attainable for him. And so with all of these, good players on the roster and all this offensive firepower and this revamped roster, I think the mainstays, the cornerstones, the guys who you've, built this offensive engine around, Zion and Trey, like, those two guys need to be the driving engine. They need to come into the season and make it their mission. But I think Trey is the guy that needs to consistently, every game, there should be no 8-point games, 9-point games. Consistently, you need to be at 20, 22, 23, to give this team a chance to be better than what everybody thinks that they should be.
I'm glad you brought up Jaylen Brown, because I couldn't agree with your point more. Because Trey can shoot the way he can, and because he plays next to Zion Williamson, I think it's easy to say you want Trey to be the Klay Thompson to Steph Curry, right? Obviously, not comparing Zion and Trey to Steph and Klay, things like that. But that's kind of how you want to be. How Klay was the second option all those years, but rarely did he dribble, and rarely did he do it because he was playing off of their system. I agree with you. I do think that while that is Trey's number one skill set and the thing he does best and why it fits so well next to Zion, by far the fact that they also are the same age and things like that, I think he needs to play more like Jaylen Brown. And that at times, if not the majority of the time, you play as if you think you're the best player on the court at any given time. There's too many times where I feel as if we talk about Trey being the conundrum, the fact that he's in the dunk contest and he could be in the three-point contest, things like that. Sometimes I feel as if Trey lets the defense settle because he's shooting from half court when he's got a small on him who definitely can't guard him and definitely is going to have to foul him or he's going to go to the free throw line. And I think if he's able to, the same way we talk about Jeremiah Fears figuring out I'm attacking the score versus I'm attacking to see if I have the advantage or if there's an open spot or open teammate. The same thing for Trey. I'm attacking the shoot, but at the same time, I'm attacking the rim because there's not very many people that can jump with me or can stop me and things like that. And once he's able to find that balance a little bit more, I think he gets to the level you're talking about. And because, again, there's too many times we've said this over the years. We've talked about, hey, Trey didn't hit the big shot, right? The shot that takes you over the top, the shot that cuts down the lead. Trey didn't hit the big shot. We've also said, where is Trey? Like a quarter went by and he didn't take a shot. How many times you see the quarter go by and Jaylen Brown didn't take a shot? Like you want that type of mentality from him. Same thing we talk about Zion. There shouldn't be 4 or 5 positions when Zion doesn't touch the ball. You want that same type of mentality for Trey because that's the only way he gets to the Jalen Williams level, to the Jaylen Brown level. Like that's the only way he gets to that if he plays with that type of veracity. Because if not, you got other guys on the team like Jeremiah Fears and like Jordan Poole that are not waiting for you to get your shot, right, bro, from that angle. So, like, I just think you're right in that angle, and it's a mentality switch that, again, I'm interested to see with Trey having the organization's back and that you're the two guy if he comes out with to start the season. So we got one pod left, Garrick, one left before this thing is started. All the opinions, all the rankings, all the tiers, all that is put to bed, and you get to roll the ball out and you get to see what teams are made of and who's going to be able to withstand the war that is the NBA regular season. What you got left for the people, Gary, because we wind down, getting closer and closer to another NBA year.
Yeah, as always, you never know what people are going through, so give someone a smile today. Yeah, man, it is here. Feels like the night before Christmas. I'm ready to see, you've heard so much talk about draft picks and unprotected and worst trade ever and all of this other stuff. Once the ball rolls on the court and it is ready to tip off, none of that matters. And I think that's the best part is that everybody's 0-0. And you never know, right? Nobody expected the Pacers to be in the finals.
A Pistons.
Yeah, nobody expected the Pistons to be good. They had the worst record of all time at one point in time 2 seasons ago. You just never know. And this is an opportunity for the Pelicans to come into the season. Again, knock on wood. We've seen game one news breaks. So let's hope for none of those. But the Pelicans coming into the season with most of their offensive weapons and the people who drive the trade healthy. And so it's going to be very interesting to see. And so we got one more pod. We'll be bringing the season predictions, coming soon. Go be fun, man.
I'm scared of that recap because
I know it wasn't. I said that I just a preview. I said the last season the Pelicans would have 3 All-Stars. That's what I said, man. They did not have 3 All-Stars. So we'll be dropping that to you soon. As always, follow myself at Garrick_Rattler. Follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler. Follow the page at NO_basketball no E. That's on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you get your socials. Most importantly, subscribe to New Orleans Basketball. We'll see you guys in the next one.